Welcome to Snoozecast, the podcast designed to help you fall asleep. On Snoozecast, we read excerpts from public domain works and, occasionally, original stories. Listen to us on snoozecast.com, like our Facebook page, and follow us on Instagram. We'd like to thank our listeners. If you enjoy our show, please write us a review on the Apple Podcasts app. Also, share it with a friend. This episode is supported by Inalienable Rights. Tonight, we'll be reading a medley of poems concerning Independence Day and the U.S. in general. Titles include The New Colossus by Emma Lazarus, Concord Hymn by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I Hear America Singing by Walt Whitman, among others. We'll begin with Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's Paul Revere's Ride, that commemorates the actions of Paul Revere on April 18, 1775. Modern critics emphasize the poem's many historical inaccuracies. Most significantly, perhaps, is Longfellow giving sole credit to Revere for the collective achievements of multiple writers. Let's get cozy. Close your eyes. Relax your body into the softness of your bed. Now, take a few deep breaths. Paul Revere's Ride by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light, one if by land, and two if by sea. And I, on the opposite shore, will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. Then he said good night, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset, British man of war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend, through alley and street, wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed the tower of the Old North Church by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade. By the trembling ladder, steep and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down a moment on the roofs of the town, and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath, in the churchyard, lay the dead, in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still that he could hear, like a sentinel's tread, the watchful night wind as it went, creeping along from tent to tent, and seeming to whisper all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour, and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead. For suddenly all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with a heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed at the landscape far and near, then, impetuous, stamped the earth, and turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still. And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry of hoofs in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath, from the pebbles in passing, a spark, struck out by a steed flying fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet, through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and the spark struck out by that steed in his flight kindled the land into flame with its heat. He has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him, tranquil and broad and deep, is the mystic meeting the ocean tides, and under the adlers that skirt its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of his steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises after the sun goes down. It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and the meeting house windows, blank and bare, gaze at him with a spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon. It was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the bleating of the flock and the twitter of birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown. And one was safe and asleep in his bed. Who at the bridge would be first to fall? Who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball? You know the rest in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For, born on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. The New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here, at our sea-washed, sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands you storied pomp, cries she, with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Concord Hymn by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Sung at the completion of the Battle Monument, July 4th, 1837. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled, here once the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world. The foe long since in silence slept, alike the conqueror silent sleeps, and time the ruined bridge has swept down the dark stream which seaward creeps. On this green bank, by this soft stream, we set today a votive stone, that memory may their deed redeem, when, like our sires, our sons are gone. Spirit, that made those heroes dare to die and leave their children free, bid time and nature gently spare the shaft we raise to them and thee. I Hear America Singing by Walt Whitman. I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam. The mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work. The boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat. The deckhand singing on the steamboat deck. The shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench. The hatter singing as he stands. The woodcutter's song, the plowboy's on his way in the morning, or at noon intermission, or at sundown. The delicious singing of the mother, or of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing or washing, each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else. The day what belongs to the day, at night the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs. To the 4th of July by Swami Vivekananda. Behold, the dark clouds melt away, that gathered thick at night and hung, so gloomy pall above the earth. Before thy magic touch the world awakes. The birds in chorus sing. The flowers raise their star-like crowns due set, and wave thee welcome fair. The lakes are opening wide in love, their 100,000 lotus eyes to welcome thee with all their depth. All hail to thee, thou Lord of light, a welcome new to thee today, O Sun. Today thou sheddest liberty. Bethink thee how the world did wait and search for thee through time and clime. Some gave up home and love of friends, and went in quest of thee, self-banished, through dreary oceans, through primeval forests, each step a struggle for their life or death. Then came the day when work bore fruit, and worship, love, and sacrifice, fulfilled, accepted, and complete. Then thou, propitious, rose to shed the light of freedom on mankind. Move on, O Lord, on thy resistless path, till thy high noon o'erspreads the world, till every land reflects thy light, till men and women with uplifted head behold their shackles broken, and know in springing joy their life is renewed. The Building of the Ship by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Build me straight, a worthy master, staunch and strong, a goodly vessel, that shall laugh at all disaster, and with wave and whirlwind wrestle. The merchant's word delighted the master heard, for his heart was in his work, and the heart giveth grace unto every art. A quiet smile played round his lips, as the eddies and dimples of the tide play round the bows of ships that steadily at anchor ride. And with a voice that was full of glee, he answered, ere long we will launch a vessel as goodly and strong and staunch as ever weathered a wintry sea. And first, with nicest skill and art, perfect and finished in every part, a little model the master wrought, which should be to the larger plan what the child is to the man, its counterpart in miniature, that with a hand more swift and sure the greatest labor might be brought to answer to his inward thought. And as he labored, his mind ran o'er the various ships that were built of yore, and above them all, and strangest of all, towered the great Harry, crank and tall, whose pictures was hanging on the wall, with bows and stern raised high in air, and balconies hanging here and there, and signal lanterns and flags afloat, and 8 round towers like those that frown from some old castle looking down upon the drawbridge and the moat. And he said with a smile, our ship, shall be of another form than this. It was of another form indeed, built for freight and yet for speed, a beautiful and gallant craft, broad in the beam, that the stress of the blast pressing down upon sail and mast might not the sharp bows overwhelm, broad in the beam, but sloping aft with graceful curve and slow degrees, that she might be docile to the helm, and that the currents of parted seas, closing behind with mighty force, might aid and not impede her course. In the shipyard stood the master, with the model of the vessel that should laugh at all disaster, and with wave and whirlwind wrestle. Covering many a rood of ground lay the timber piled around, timber of chestnut and elm and oak, and scattered here and there with these the gnarled and crooked cedar knees, brought from regions far away, from Pascagoula's sunny bay, and the banks of the roaring Roanoke. What a wondrous thing it is to note how many wheels of toil one thought, one word can set in motion. There's not a ship that sails the ocean, but every climate, every soil must bring its tribute, great or small, and help to build the wooden wall. The sun was rising o'er the sea, and long the level shadows lay, as if they too, the beams would be of some great airy argosy, framed and launched in a single day. That silent architect, the sun, had hewn and laid them, every one, ere the work of man was yet begun. Beside the master, when he spoke, a youth, against an acre leaning, listened to catch his slightest meaning. Only the long waves, as they broke in ripples on the pebbly beach, interrupted the old man's speech. Beautiful they were, in sooth, the old man and the fiery youth, the old man in whose busy brain many a ship that sailed the main was modeled o'er and o'er again. The fiery youth, who was to be the heir of his dexterity, the heir of his house and his daughter's hand, when he had built and launched from land what the elder head had planned. Thus, said he, we will build this ship, lay square the blocks upon the slip, and follow well this plan of mine. Choose the timbers with greatest care, of all that is unsound beware, for only what is sound and strong to this vessel shall belong. Cedar of Maine and Georgia pine here together shall combine, a goodly frame and a goodly frame, and the union be her name. For the day that gives her to the sea shall give my daughter unto thee.